Hi, my name is Tanya and I'm a sewaholic. Welcome to my YouTube channel, It's So Tanji. This will be a video that is not the normal type of my catch-up sewing vlog, because I thought about doing kind of a little knowledge series where I want to share tips and tricks all about sewing, especially for beginner sewists. So not really my normal target audience, but more for people who haven't been sewing or haven't been sewing for a long time. So I hope that you found this video because you want to get a bit more into the world of sewing. And I have a few tips for you on how to start your sewing journey. And I have made notes here because I will forget what I want to tell you if I don't write everything down. But this video will be split into what you need for starting your sewing journey. So the very basic tools that you need. You don't need all the things you see behind me. There's just a few basic things you will need. Then I will share with you books and online courses that can help you in your sewing journey. And I will tell you where best to get fabrics at the beginning, and also a bit of the types of fabrics that are best for beginners. And then I will finish off with which patterns are, in my opinion, best to start with when you are just learning to sew. So let's get to the content of this video. Okay, as I said in the intro, you won't need a whole lot of stuff for beginning your sewing journey. There is just a few tools that will help you cut your fabric, for example, mark your fabric, and that kind of stuff. And it is overall 8 tools that, in my opinion, you will need for starting sewing. And the first one, if you are into machine sewing and not hand sewing, because then obviously you won't need a sewing machine, but if you want to do your sewing on a machine, you will need a sewing machine. But it won't have, or it is not necessary to buy a brand new sewing machine. There are lots of used second-hand sewing machines on the market. You can search on platforms like Facebook Marketplace, for example, or what I did in the beginning, I used my mom's sewing machine, and nearly everybody of us has someone in their circle of friends and family members who owns a sewing machine. And you could, for example, just ask if you could borrow the machine for a week or two to just get sewing and see for yourself if it is something you like. And in my opinion, you won't need an overlocker at the beginning, which is the machine you finish off your seams with, and it is this one I have here. I didn't have a overlocker in the beginning, and I just did a zigzag stitch on my normal sewing machine to finish off the seams. And then you will also definitely need a measuring tape. You will need that throughout your sewing journey, and it is not expensive at all, so you can get a new one, or again, you can borrow it from a relative or a friend. Then it makes sense to get pin needles and a pin cushion. There are many different types of pin cushions and also pins. I would say if you're just like trying out if this is a hobby for you, don't invest in the most expensive tools, just get your basic pin needles. And you can also use just like a small cushion or something like that as a pin cushion, but there are also, for example, magnetic ones, which I really like, but pins and a pin cushion are essential. Then you will definitely need fabric scissors. And it totally makes sense not to use your normal paper cutting scissors, but get a pair of scissors that is really created for cutting fabrics. And my first pair of scissors was just one of Amazon. I'm not the biggest fan of Amazon, but I didn't have a lot of money to spend on something that I didn't know I would really want to continue doing. So I just got a pair of honestly very, very good fabric scissors that didn't cost me a lot. I think they cost me around 13 euros, and there was a pair of snips included in the package. So yeah, that works very well, but don't use your paper cutting scissors for fabric. It can honestly ruin your fabric, and you don't want that to happen. Then what is very important is a seam ripper, and that's not only important in the beginning of your sewing journey, but throughout the whole process. You will always make mistakes, and that's fine, and that's also important in the learning process. So get a seam ripper or two, they get lost, and you will always have one on hand. A marking tool is also quite important in the beginning. You can use something like tailor's chalk, or there are chalk pens. You can also use friction pens, which are not really created for sewing, but they are heat erasable. So when you iron over them, they will disappear, at least on cotton fabric. But test it before you, on a little scrap of fabric, before you mark your whole fabric, because if it doesn't erase itself when it gets hot, then you will have a marked fabric. But there are lots of different marking tools out there. You can also just type it into the search bar on Google, for example. Then for your machine, you will need sewing machine needles. Maybe in the beginning, just get the normal standard ones, and don't buy too many, because if you don't want to continue with your new hobby, then you don't have a lot of sewing machine needles lying around at home. But in the beginning, just get the very standard sewing machine needles. And you will also need bobbins and thread for your machine. Bobbins normally come with the machine itself. Normally there are, I don't know, about 5 included with the machine. And if you borrow the machine, probably the person who used it before still has some of these bobbins left. And then also what you will need is just a thread for your sewing machine that you will also wind on your bobbin. And I would highly recommend to go for high quality thread in this case, because the cheaper quality ones, for example, the threads that come in cheap sewing kits and that kind of stuff, they normally make a lot of problems. Your sewing machine probably won't really like it, and then you just have you will just get frustrated by the amount of tangles you will get, for example. So buy, for example, a thread from Gütermann, which is a very high quality thread. It is not the cheapest, but it is not really expensive either. Maybe get a black and a white one for the beginning, and then you can start sewing. You now have all the tools, and we can go to the next chapter, which is courses and books that I would recommend. Okay, so in terms of study material for beginning your sewing journey, I would say a great place is always the internet, of course. YouTube is like a knowledge hub in my opinion, and there are so many amazing tutorials out there, so many videos where people explain how to tackle certain projects, but also on just how to start your sewing journey. And I know that on the channel Rosary Apparel by Janelle, that she is a very lovely lady from Tasmania, and she did a beginner sewing series, I think. I'm not sure what it was called exactly, but I will link everything I'm talking about in the description box down below, and so you can check it out. And I think she just leads you very nicely just through the process of starting your sewing journey, and she also includes projects in that series. But I am sure there are so many more amazing videos out there. Just type into the search bar beginner sewing project or free sewing tutorial, or if you want to make a certain garment, for example crop top, type into the search bar how to make a crop top, that kind of stuff, and you will certainly get a few videos that will definitely help you. And then there are also platforms on the internet that are dedicated to learning. For example, I used Skillshare in the past, not necessarily for sewing in my case, but I used it for my marketing career, for example, and did some courses there. But I know that there are also sewing related courses on Skillshare. There you would have to pay a monthly fee to get access, but the videos are very high quality from my experience, and they really help you when you want to start a new hobby. And I think, for example, Bernadette Benner, if I am not mistaken, has a sewing tutorial series on Skillshare. I'm not sure if it is maybe more advanced, but it is definitely worth checking out. And when talking of Bernadette Benner, there is one category in the study materials part of this video where I want to talk about books. And I think books are a great resource for everything, to be honest, every new hobby, every interest of you. And I think Bernadette Benner's book is also a great way to start. Not necessarily because you have to learn everything that is in here. It is a lot of hand sewing techniques, but I just think it is just great to get a feeling for sewing. She also explains, for example, here we have the shearing scissors that I talked about earlier here, for example. And yeah, it is a book full of knowledge. She also talks about the tools you need to have and the nice to have tools. So this book is definitely also a good starting point. And it is called Make, Sew and Mend by Bernadette Benner. And then if you want to start your sewing journey, I would also always highly recommend Tilly and the Buttons books. They are full of sewing patterns as well. Tilly's patterns are very easy to understand. They are very well drafted, and what is also nice is that she explains different techniques in her books as well. I have the stretch book, which is all about working with stretch materials, and then I have the Make It Simple book, which is just easy, speedy sewing projects. And I know that she also has one which is for absolute beginners, and I don't have this one, but I will also link it down below. And I think this would also be a very good starting point for you if you're not into YouTube and Skillshare and that kind of stuff. So that's the study materials that will help you start your sewing journey. And I will now go on to the next topic, which is where to get fabrics. When you start sewing, I would also recommend not buying the most expensive, most beautiful fabrics you have seen in the fabric shop, but also, as with the sewing machine, ask your relatives, ask your neighbors, ask your friends. Maybe some of them do crafts, maybe some of them are into dressmaking and they have just fabrics lying around that they don't need anymore. It was the same for me. My mom used to be a big quilter and she had lots of quilting cottons stashed away in our cellar, and I just used them to make very simple garments. There were also some bigger cotton pieces she had, and I could use them as well. So that's a great way to get basically free fabrics. But if there is nobody in your area or in your with your relatives that has fabrics, then maybe just go to a charity shop. And I know that in lots of parts of the world there are charity shops, and lots of them have fabric like sections where they only really sell fabrics, but some of them don't really have fabrics, but they may have like bed sheets or curtains or tablecloth and that kind of stuff. And most of the time these fabric or these like home textiles are also made from very stable cottons, and they are a great starting point for making tote bags, for example, or cushion covers and that kind of stuff. So definitely a great way to start sewing with. And that also leads me to a little recommendation in terms of which fabrics to get. And I would highly recommend getting very stable fabrics at the beginning. So something like a cotton, a quilting cotton, a cotton poplin, or like something more heavier weight also maybe, because they won't shift around. They will make your life easy. They will behave with when you work with your sewing machine. And in the beginning, that is everything you need. You don't need shifty fabrics where you get frustrated after every single step. I would just recommend starting with very stable fabrics. And now on to the last part of my video, which is my recommendations for patterns when you start sewing. When it comes to patterns, as I said before, I would highly recommend Tilly and the Buttons and her books. Of course, you can buy the single patterns for different garments, but if you get one of her books, you will have several patterns inside for a very, very reasonable price. And you can try lots of different variations. She also teaches you how to hack certain patterns. And I think that is just a very great way to start in the beginning. In the same area of patterns, I would also recommend getting sewing magazines. For example, I am really into Fibre Mood for the same reason that there are very, very many patterns in one of their magazines, and one of the magazines costs, I think, around 20 euros, and you get a lot of patterns for that price, which I think is great. Fibre Mood doesn't have the most beginner-friendly instructions in the magazine itself, but you can go online, log in or register on their website, and then you will get access to a bit more in-depth instructions. But maybe start with Tilly and the Buttons first before you go on to Fibre Mood. But in general, I think sewing magazines like Fibre Mood or Burda are a great way to get lots of patterns for not that much money. And what I personally did in the beginning was I started sewing during the pandemic, and I didn't have the knowledge about Fibre Mood and Tilly and the Buttons, for example. So I just went on to Pinterest and onto YouTube. On Pinterest, I searched for garments that I liked the look of, and I typed sewing tutorials or free sewing patterns into the search bar. And honestly, there were lots of great just patterns or tutorials on how to make certain garments, and the same with YouTube. So that helped me a lot. On YouTube, you also get the video instructions most of the time, which is also great if you're a visual learner like myself. And then also, if you don't want to spend a lot of money in the beginning, just in the Google search bar type in free sewing patterns. There are a lot of free sewing patterns out in the world. Peppermint Magazine has lots of them. They're very nice. They're great, and they have most of the time very nice instructions as well. And as I said, they are free. So that is definitely a great starting point if you want to start your dressmaking journey. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it helped you on your way to becoming a sewist. If you want to get more of these knowledge kind of videos, I would be very grateful if you could comment down below and tell me. I thought about doing a video all about different types of fabrics and for what type of garments they are used, and how they behave, for example, and that kind of stuff. So if you're interested in that topic, then let me know. Or for example, how to shop for fabrics online would also be a topic I would like to talk about. So if you're interested, please let me know. Please give me a thumbs up, and also please subscribe to my channel if you want to see more sewing updates and hopefully more knowledge-based content in the future. Take care, guys. Bye.